Okay, this is going to be pretty hard to do for me to hold the camera steady enough so you can see it. There's a lot of light from outside, and I've had to put the vacuum gauge actually on the outside, taped to the windshield. It's pretty hokey. To keep the vacuum line short. The port vacuum, I can't use a very long line in order to sense it. You actually lose it. It's a really tiny hole. It's not pulling much volume, much mass flow, so you have to sense it with a fairly short line. And then of course we have the difficulty of getting it through the bonnet here and into the engine compartment without pinching off the line. So this is all pretty hard. And I'm not terribly confident the absolute magnitude of the numbers we're seeing is correct. It's probably not far off, but the numbers might be a little low, on the low side, because we might be having a little pinching off. And the other thing is the length of the tube. All the air in the tube actually kind of dampens the readings you get when you're dealing with such a small amount of airflow. Okay, anyway, into first gear. Really hard to do. Okay, with throttle off, nothing. Okay, that's characteristic of the port vacuum. If you really shut off the hole. Okay, to the stop sign. As soon as we open up the throttle, you'll see it blip. Come off. This is fairly low load here, gentle acceleration. So what you're seeing is the needle kind of increases with the amount of flow through the carburetor, which makes sense. This is the port vacuum. It's kind of a pressure tap. But it's not all that simple either. As I said, that was fairly gentle acceleration. Now we're off throttle there, and we're back down to 0. Okay, and now here we're going down a hill off of a stop sign, so gentle acceleration. See the value come up. Until I get to the point in the hill where I need to use a little engine braking, take the foot off the throttle, and nothing. All of that again, consistent with kind of what makes sense. Now, the difference here, well, we'll get to that in a moment. We're going to get down to the bottom of the hill. I'll turn it off here, and I'm going to come back up this hill. It's pretty good, pretty steep hill, and we'll see what happens with a little harder acceleration and with a heavier load on the motor. Downshift for a nice little sharp bend here. This is a residential area. Trying to be fairly careful here, watching what's going on in the street. It's a very light traffic, so not to do anything too terribly stupid here. Alright, let's try to get turned around. A little harder to do one-handed into first gear. Let's find where our gauge go. There it is. A little acceleration, but this time up a little hill here before we make the bend. Then turn up the hill, and here we go. There we go. Fairly hard acceleration up the hill. What you see is, instead of just sensing flow, when the engine won't let, when the load on the engine won't let the flow increase, yet you've got the butterfly open. You decrease the vacuum, not quite the same way, or I should say not quite to the extent that you see how all that works with manifold vacuum, but there is a similar effect going on. So really what you got is two things. You've got, first of all, three things. You've got blocked off with no throttle. You've got kind of measuring the flow through the carburetor as long as you have light throttle, or I should say you have throttle with very light load. And then when you put load on the engine, and open up the throttle, you decrease the vacuum. You probably hear, hopefully you can hear the exhaust note and kind of get a feel for what's going on. There's off throttle, back on, off, on, but fairly light load, where we were on a slight uphill there. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit more. This is a relative flat here, so I'll kind of do some fairly gentle acceleration, but get the R's up. You can see as the revolutions come up, with light throttle, you're getting, again, I think, a measure of flow through the carburetor. So, remembering how this is hooked up to the distributor, that means as you get more fuel, airflow through the carburetor with light throttle pressure, you're getting increasing advance. But as soon as you hit some load and you open up that throttle and the engine's lagging behind and it's got load on it, you see the vacuum drop off, which means it's retarding, which is kind of in a similar way that the manifold vacuum does. Let me turn here and get the right gear. Here we go. There it is. So, in general, if you're trying to get your advance as far advanced as you can get away with without detonation, especially for light engine loads, you're trying to get it even beyond the point where it would detonate with heavy loads. Either one of these, the manifold or the port vacuum, on load is going to, the vacuum's going to go down and you're going to retard. I think the extent of that effect is probably more dramatic with manifold vacuum. Like I said, I'm not completely certain about the magnitudes of the readings here. If you're paying attention to the numbers, you can't see them now, bouncing all around. But if you could see the numbers at any point there, it's like a lot of this is occurring. You know, there's not a whole lot of vacuum. It's down around 5 inches of mercury, which the vacuum advance doesn't even kick in at that level. And kind of the maximum number I'm seeing here is, I don't know, up around maybe 15, 12, something like that. Which is below, I think, on most of these vacuum advance units, it's just at or even a little below full vacuum advance. So here we are, engine braking down the hill, coming around the curve to the house, and thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Okay, there we are, tapped into the port vacuum fitting on the Zenith Stromberg carburetor. The EGR valve sitting right there. That hose is disconnected. It would normally be plugged into this port. So, and then of course we go out to the car, connected, and there's our gauge on the windshield. Taking another shot here. Really struggling with lighting and zoom level, that sort of thing. But here's our Zenith-Stromberg carburetor. Right in the center of the picture right now is where the vacuum line tap is tapping into what is called port vacuum, right at the butterfly on the throttle. And there's the EGR valve. And coming off the top of the EGR valve is the signal line that you can't quite tell here, but is unplugged and would normally be plugged in right there where we're tapping into port vacuum. And then if you're wondering about the setup to the car itself, to the distributor, there's the line coming from the distributor. It's on a little T here. The bottom line going down goes to the intake manifold, and the other little line is a little signal line going to the gulp valve. So that's our test setup for port vacuum.